Hello and welcome to The Week, the show that takes a look at some of the big talking points from across our region over the past 7 days. Coming up over the next hour, we'll be chatting with studio guests, we'll be reviewing the headlines in the local papers and serving up a few leisure ideas in our Something for the Weekend section. We'll also be looking back at some of the big stories covered by our news team over the last 7 days that have got you talking. Remember, as we said last week, this is your show. If there's an issue you think we should be tackling or a point you want to make, just drop us a line. You can reach us on the Big Centre TV website, on Facebook, or by dropping an email to theweek@bigcentre.tv. Now, someone who did just that after last week's show was Joe from Dudley, who emailed us about the topic we were talking about, fly tipping. We were chatting about a block switch man who was fined over £1,700 after being caught on camera, and Joe had this to say: "Good on the authorities. Let's hope it encourages more people to use their smartphones to capture video evidence of these lazy people who are ruining communities for the rest of us." Just the sort of feedback we're looking for. Please keep your comments coming. Now, helping me to review the local papers this week is a man who's no stranger to appearing in front of the camera. Dan Morfit's an award-winning presenter, producer and programmer who's worked on radio and TV. Dan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me on. Thanks.
Pleasure. Now, lots to chat about this week. As I mean, last week's show we kicked off with some real good hard-hitting human interest stories about fly tipping, about problems with almost a lack of respect for authority. We were talking about the woman who couldn't get her seat on the train, the pregnant woman, and there just seemed to be this anti-authority approach, didn't there?
It's a build-up of angst. Now that we've got social media as well, we're hearing more of this. It's always happened, I think, but we're more aware of it now, and people have the power in their hands to video or send a tweet and just try and put things right.
Talking of social media, the Twitter sphere and Facebook world has gone absolutely berserk this week since the Labour leadership election at the weekend, and the least surprising result, really.
Well, it took them months. The Ashes were over and done with before the Labour leadership election, and it was just dragging. But when that final result came in, I remember watching it come through on Saturday morning. The Raw, 60%, almost 60% of the vote, and I think he came first in both the Parliamentary Party, the actual supporters, and the members of the Labour Party. He's got a mandate to lead now, and just to see all the machinations of people saying he's too left-wing, he's going to be a threat to national security is an interesting fire keg to see.
Well, he got a greater mandate than Tony Blair when Tony Blair was
different way of voting him in, but the way they opened it up for £3 supporters, I think has brought a great influx of new blood to the Labour Party. Looking at the general election after that, the Liberal Democrats supporters and membership rocketed up as well. It's quite nice to see people engaging in politics again.
Well, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn was talking at the TUC event on Tuesday, saying that he reckons 30,000 people have joined the Labour Party since his election as leader. So, you know, you can see some MPs who are with a more Blairite tendency shuffling in their seats, and a lot of people jostling for position. But the one thing you've got to say, whatever your political persuasion is, at least now voters have got a clear choice, haven't they, as to what they want.
I think people were getting bored with politics just coalescing in the centre and staying there and becoming stagnant. And the choice that Labour supporters had was quite decent. Liz Kendall, who is quite centrist, some people said she's a red Tory. Yvette Cooper, or Mrs Ed Balls, but she doesn't want to dwell on that. And Andy Burnham as well, who sort of took it upon himself to not show him as different from Blair politics, but basically go around saying, I'm Northern me, so please vote for me. Didn't work. The fact that Jeremy Corbyn did get the mandate is surprising, and it's funny to see how quick the media's reacted against him. I don't know if that's fear or if they're just trying to get a few stories out in the broadsheets. I
think they can see that he's a man who will speak his mind. He's a principled politician, and if they goad him to a certain degree, he won't take the spin doctor's approach, will he? He'll tell them what he thinks. So.
Well, the anti-spin as well is happening with him, because he's been doorstepped by much of the press. Newspapers have videographers now with cameras following them, and he's basically refused to give in any interviews that have not been booked in. I think it's a sensible way of not having to react to a little soundbite that might have been already prepared or just an ill off-the-cuff comment. I think it's a nice way of doing politics. It's going to be interesting to see what he does.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the Birmingham Mail have reported this week that Midlands MPs are already sort of leading this fight about just how far Labour should shift. You've got Black Country MP John Speller, who's this leading member of this group called Labour First, that promotes the more moderate policies and candidates. Then you've got Birmingham MPs who are leading a group called Red Shift, which says it's going to publish a report before the Labour conference at the end of September, looking at how the party can win more seats in England. They've all got their own little idea as to which way they want to push and tug Jeremy Corbyn, haven't they?
As soon as he became the new leader, people like Shabana Mahmood immediately said, I don't want to be part of the cabinet. It wasn't locked on that she was going to be part of the new cabinet. People are already jostling for position. And it's surprising that a few of our region's MPs have almost come out against Corbyn because, you know, the deputy is a great moderate voice in Tom Watson. And I think he's going to be part of the party as well. He's very trusted, especially from the backbenches. It's just he is a complete enemy of, say, the Murdoch press. That's going to be an absolute doozy to keep watching because they already try to bring up dirt on him. They rifle through his dustbins. He has got previous with them, so it's going to be a wonderful thing to see. And also with PMQs as well. It's going to be interesting to see Tom up there. And Jeremy Corbyn's already said the questions that he asks the Prime Minister on a Wednesday at the dispatch box is going to be the questions of the people. Interesting.
Whatever happens, I mean, how many of these great ideals they're able to put into practice, you know, when the practice of office emerges, we're not so sure, but it will make politics far more interesting to watch, won't it? So
definitely, and I think he's bringing more women into the shadow cabinet. I think a few people said it's not the top jobs, and he came out and said, well, your definition of top jobs is different from mine. I think that's quite good, and a great step forward is he's got a shadow member of cabinet for mental health, separating that completely from health and really seeing that it is needed in this day and age.
Mr Corbyn will be on the front pages for a few weeks to come. Now, great story here that we picked up. We hear lots about our public bus services that are dwindling due to lack of you know, to use it or lose it approach, isn't it really? But, you know, proof here that we've got in the Cannock newspaper, isn't it, this one, that public pressure has been listened to and Arriva have done something of a U-turn here. So
it's from the Cannock Mercury, and you know, I'm old enough to remember, as probably you are, Carl, when buses were run by councils and they were, you know, the corporation buses that I used to get on, and then everything became private. There's subsidies for them to run certain routes, of course, but if numbers dwindle, then there's no point in running that bus route anymore. However, the service to Cannock to Walsall across Landywood Lane and Cheslin Hay is back, and that's because people have demanded it. And fair play to Arriva saying the reinstatement shows that we have listened to our customers and they're going to provide a new service. Well, bring back a service. I think that's great to see. And again, it's that thing that people can do now. You don't have to write a postcard or a letter to some grey man in an office anymore. You can get together with people who you don't know. People just tweet, people Facebook, and get things done. I think it's a great thing. Hopefully people will use the service.
That's the key now, isn't it? Now they've actually done it, they've got to put their money where their mouth's been to actually say, right, okay, we will now use this service and make it viable.
Use it or lose it.
Talking of U-turns, I mean, one of the other big stories in our region this week, which I've got coverage in the Express as to high, but all the newspapers have covered it, is great news for RAF Cosford, isn't it?
Yeah, it was under threat of losing its status as the training base for, I think, radio and aeronautical engineering. It was going to be moved further down south, but they're actually scrapping that now and actually upping the training at RAF Cosford into a fourth school. It's really, really good news for local jobs and just local status as well. We've lost so much around these parts, and you know, the Midlands is a massive manufacturing base, and we need employers like the Ministry of Defence to stay here and invest.
Because the flip side, had Cosford lost a lot of these facilities, the infrastructure that would have been taken away from Cosford, you know, that's people spending money in shops, that's people buying houses. It's a mini village in its own right,
it's
isn't
a
it?
community draining away, and you don't want that. It is it's a terrible situation for people in the Wrekin to have been in, because as ever, we get new governments come in all the time, and they promise to change things in the Ministry of Defence. We all really know that things normally stay the same. The armed forces are a separate entity, as it were. So terrible that they've had to go through the heartache, but great news for RAF Gosford.
Let's be grateful maybe that Michael Fallon's got a few other things on his mind at the moment and hasn't actually needed to put this near the top of his agenda. Another junction down the M54, of course, we've got the I-54 development and the massive Jaguar Land Rover plant. I loved this picture on the front of the Express and Star on Tuesday. You can see it here. Jaguar's record breaker loops the loop. Look at that. That's an absolutely amazing shot, isn't it?
You watch it, and did they do it on fifth gear? I think
they did,
a while
actually.
back, and they did it in the daytime, and it was, they showed the physics. But it's a wonderful video if you get to see it. Pitch black, then all these lights on this mini runway. Man calmly gets into an
F-Pace. Stunt driver Terry Grant driving the F-Pace.
It's like a 4x4 Jaguar, isn't it? And it is breathtaking. Then you see the fireworks go off, and the 8 illuminates next to it. I think this is great for JLR and great for the region as well. It looks fantastic. Also this week, I think Range Rover released this picture, which is an absolutely amazing car. £300,000 indestructible Land Rover. It's called the Sentinel, and it's an outstanding occupant protection mobile fortress.
What's that? An SM something? Somebody will come up with a fancy name for that soon.
It can withstand high velocity bullets, TNT blasts. We could send this out with our boys.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing car. It's great to see what JLR are doing.
All a reminder of what fantastic manufacturing expertise we've actually got in our patch at the moment, isn't it? But I have to say, that's what you call a product launch for the Frankfurt Motor Show, isn't it?
Yeah, breathtaking.
A nice bit of a world record. On the subject of transport, of course, we've also had the recruitment drive that kicked off yesterday for the first raft of jobs in the Birmingham area for this new HS2 link. This is a bit of a Marmite project, isn't it, for people?
I think it's a really good project. I just want to see it start. The college is going to be based here in the Midlands. That's good news. I just want to see work on like Curzon Street. We're about to see new streets open this weekend. I think HS2 could be a great brand new dawn, but of course things may change in the next few years, because that date of 2017 start date for building seems far off. It's not.
I think every time the date goes back, the budget goes up a little bit. A few more opponents maybe come on the back of that. They want to see something happening, don't they? So
Corbyn is very anti-HS2.
Absolutely. Now, cricket season's virtually finished, as are some of our local cricket pavilions, if we are to believe the Stourbridge News story that's come out this week. Cricketers in Kinver are worried that their pavilion's going to be hit for 6, they say, because it's fallen into increasing disrepair. They've applied for grants to try and repair it. They've not been forthcoming. Anyone that's played club cricket, I think, can relate to this, can't they? Where you've got essentially a community field that's got a little portable hut on the side that needs to be kept up, by a small dwindling group of volunteers. And yet some of these buildings are an absolute part of your rural history, aren't they?
Rickety, but part of the community. I think, a successful Ashes campaign is great because it'll get kids interested in cricket again, but the fact that it's not on normal television does a disservice. And when we see, Edgbaston is one of the greatest cricket grounds in the world now, and to see local pavilions sort of fall short and be disused or run down and with no funds forthcoming, I think the ECB needs to come forward and say, let's get some money back into the game that way.
I think you can look at it in sport as a whole. That in football, there's all talk about the Premier League creaming off all the profits while grassroots football pitches are struggling. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Grassroots sport. We hear reports out this week saying we need to find ways of encouraging our youngsters to spend more time out in the great outdoors. Local cricket clubs are the way to do that, aren't they? So it's all part of a big picture that you would think the government would want to get behind.
Now, around my way, I'm just near City Road, near the Black Country boundary with Birmingham. There was the old M&B cricket ground, and I think it got left in a covenant to Warwickshire. And to their credit, they've done it up, and it's a great community resource. And they had a couple of great fun days throughout the summer. So I think that's a good example for others in the area.
Last one before we take a quick break. This is what you call a return on investment, isn't it? Birmingham Post are reporting that a large proportion of Brindley Place in Birmingham has been placed on the market. 5 years ago it was bought for 190 million.
Not short change.
It's now valued at £300 million.
That is massive, and another showed that Birmingham's really working as a magnet for business. I've always worked around Brindley Place, and a few years ago when BT moved out, it left a gaping hole. Now Deutsche Bank have moved in, everything's let out, there's new restaurants coming to Brindley Place, and with the building of Arena Central as well across the way on Broad Street, it's really going to be a hub for the banking community and business in general in the West Midlands.
See if we can find somebody that's got 300 million to spare. Lots more to come on the week after the break. Stick with us because we'll soon be meeting a Birmingham-based barrister who's used his experience and knowledge to write a new legal thriller. Welcome back to The Week, our new weekend show, taking a look at some of the big talking points around the West Midlands. Dan Morfitt is still with us as we take a look at some of the stories which have been making the headlines on Big Centre TV's news shows this week. Now, we hear lots of talk about community spirit and neighbourly behaviour being a thing of the past, we're told. Well, try telling that to this group of people from York Road in Kings Heath.
We've got a fantastic street festival. Kings Heath is a really vibrant local centre in Birmingham, and so we've put on a street festival that is running from York Road into Heathfield Road, doubled the size this year because it was so successful last year. So it's just a day for community and businesses to come together and really celebrate all that's good about Kings Heath. And we've done a lot of promoting, telling people through our Enjoy Kings Heath platforms all about what we're up to, and the local people have come down, and of course the sunny weather helps as well.
And so far, I mean, what has the response been like to today's event?
Well, I can tell you the response before we started and before we got to today has been huge. Since last year's event, the customers have kept saying, is it coming back, is it coming back? It was amazing last year, so we had to bring it back. And yeah, I mean, we've had people volunteering from the community wanting to help us out. We've had people here today giving out, setting out the lounge area and all sorts of things for us. So really fantastic response from everyone, and it's great when these things come together.
And so due to high demand, it's back this year. Do you think it'll be back another year for next year?
Absolutely, yeah. This is the new thing in Kings Heath. We've got festivals around the city, and this is Kings Heath's baby. So yeah, every year around the beginning of September we're going to be here doing the Kings Heath Street Festival.
And what do you think a celebration like this brings to the region, the community and to the locals here?
It brings people together. We've got such a lovely community in Kings Heath. It's a really vibrant, bohemian, indie area of the city. And then we've got fantastic businesses through the Business Improvement District who are actually funding this event. So it's all the businesses that are coming together with the community, and it just means a huge amount to people. And like you say, you can see just how happy everyone is to be here, and families, all sorts of people, music lovers, food lovers, shopping lovers.
Looking around, you've got artists, you've got people selling all sorts of food, just smells amazing. What can people expect here?
So yeah, live music. So the Hare and Hounds is a national music venue, and they've got a live stage bus. So we've got live music throughout the day, interspersed with a more acoustic stage in Heathfield Road, which has been put on by the Sun at the Station pub. And then we've got food, street food, so our own Kings Heath businesses are coming out and serving people, but we've also got additional street food vendors out here. We've got crafts, children's events, fairground rides. Hopefully you might be able to see the Ferris wheel behind me, which is huge. Couldn't believe the size of it when it arrived this morning. We've got live art happening next to me, to my left, and just can't believe we've got a magician walking around. There's all sorts. It's just really exciting.
And how do local businesses benefit from a celebration like this?
Well, do you know, it's about obviously on the day, and people do some very good trade, but it's the bigger picture. What we're doing in Kings Heath through the Business Improvement District is building a real place, a place where people want to come. We're pushing the brand of Kings Heath. We're telling people, enjoy Kings Heath. That's what people do here. We've got a lot of independents, etc. So it's the long-term effect of putting on these events. We also do a winter fest when we switch on our Christmas lights. And we keep lots of different things going so that people keep coming here, and our local residents just love being part of Kings Heath. People are proud to be from here.
Now, we didn't have a Ferris wheel, but I do remember back in 1981 for Charles and Diana's wedding, we had a big street party in our cul-de-sac in Wensfield, and all the community came out. But people tell us these things don't happen anymore. Clearly they're wrong.
And it's great to see, communities coming together like this and holding a big jamboree. I think a lot of kudos has got to go to the business improvement districts around there for sorting it out. But Kings Heath is really becoming a part of Birmingham that is, up and coming. It used to be Moseley, just a few yards up the road, and Kings Heath is really getting bigger and better, which is bad because my missus is looking at houses around there and the house prices
the price is going to go up now. Yeah, getting quickly then in that case.
Yes. And lovely to see the families out, and the weather was really good as well at the weekend for once. So,
but the knock-on effects of this, the fact that everyone knows their neighbours, if there's any vulnerable people in a community, you're going to be able to knock on a door and just keep an eye on them.
And it shows the pubs and the clubs in a different light, because the Hare and Hounds, a few years ago it was like the bogeyman of Kings Heath. Oh, it's too loud, there's too many club nights going on there. Now it's part of the community, really involved and flourishing because of that.
And another example in a totally different context of people power actually pulling something off. We talk about getting bus routes back. We see some local pubs starting to maybe rejuvenate on the back of the fact that we all like real ale again now as well. There's lots of just little pockets of signs, aren't there, of neighbours actually showing that communities, we're not isolated. We're not just sitting in our bedrooms on the internet all the time.
It is weird how it's all coming together, because, from your Facebook, groups are coming together and then they are coming out of their doors and meeting each other on the doorstep. It's really nice to see. And it's not just happening in Birmingham, but it's happening all across the West Midlands.
Excellent. Now then, speeding drivers have long been a menace outside the gates of some of our local schools, but a group of campaigners in Sedgley have decided enough is enough, and they're now calling for action outside the local Catholic school, St Chad's.
We've had quite a few complaints from local residents about not just the traffic, but about the parking. So we've done a survey and asked people what they would like us to do.
By the time we come
there's
out
an
of
issue
this,
around the school.
we'll have about 2 minutes to chat about this and then talk
so
about
we're looking at double yellow lines to try and ease some of the way the road gets blocked with the parking there. But there's also a problem
20
with
mile an hour zones
boy races
is all about,
going up
isn't
and
it,
down the
where they
lane,
work,
and it's not really the kind of lane where you can go more than a decent speed without it being dangerous. So we're looking at a 20 mile an hour speed limit. When the cars are all parked up here dropping the kids off, and then you get anyone coming at any kind of pace along here, you just can't see them coming. It's dangerous pulling out in a car. Certainly dangerous for the kids crossing the road. Let's try and get something done before, God forbid, anything terrible happens.
And you mentioned you've been going around the residents. What sort of response have you had?
We've had a really strong response. We've had about 20 of our surveys returned to us. We've had people coming up to meet us in the street. People popped into my office, which is not far away from here, just saying, we need something done. They're welcoming the fact that someone's taken an interest, and we're going to do our best not to let them down and try and make this a bit better.
And so what are you now proposing?
We're going to put forward double yellow lines around the school area and a 20 mile an hour speed limit along the lane.
And so obviously one of the problems is cars just pulling up and dropping off their children. I mean, double yellow lines is a speed limit. That's not going to solve the issue. Surely there should be a car park somewhere as well where parents can park.
We've got a major issue with car parking, not just in Sedgley but in Dudley as a whole. There aren't enough car parks, particularly, this place, this is an old lane. It's a place that, it's grown over the years. It would be ideal if there was a car park, but there just isn't anywhere here to do it. So we're going to try and manage the flow as best we can with what we've got.
And so have you had much cooperation with the school?
We haven't had a lot with the school, but I would expect the school to cooperate as part of their civic duty to work with us to make this a safer place for the children and for the people who live here.
And so what are the next steps in actually putting these plans into action?
We've submitted them to the council. We'll be following up with the council, telling them we've got the support of the people of the area, and hopefully the council will do the right thing and back us up and get this in place.
It's an interesting issue, this, isn't it? Because in many areas, you've got schools that maybe when they were first built were in a fairly rural area. Now they've been built up, so there are fewer places for people to park. More of the parents have got cars as well. You've got families that can now choose which schools they want to go to, and it all adds up, doesn't it, into a perfect storm.
That's the problem, school league tables. You want the best for your kid, obviously, but when you decide to pick a school that's maybe a little bit further away and that kids can't get a bus to necessarily or walk to, you're going to take the car, and that's the problem. We've seen these bottlenecks in areas, and it's causing knock-on effects for everyone else, really. It's not good as well when we're talking about speed around schools. A lot of those people speeding are the parents trying to drop their kids off with a few minutes spare, and it's a bad situation for everybody. What I'd like to see, though, is Parents teach their kids how to cross the road more. The number of times just driving here tonight, seeing people try and cross the road in heavy traffic, just yards away from a crossing, is ridiculous. Teach your kids how to cross the road safely, and then we won't see many more accidents around these areas. And those areas will be 20 miles an hour zones and used properly.
I tell you, one of the things that really frustrates me is the number of people who are oblivious to what's going on around them because they're walking around with headphones on. So, you know, cyclists who can't hear a potential dangerous thing happening, or school children just walking on with headphones on. You're supposed to have all your senses about you, aren't you, when you're out and about?
That and people with earphones in, driving. I've never understood that. It's not as if you're listening to a tune. You're already in your cocoon of a car. So it's annoying.
Radio on full blast, singing to your heart's content, and then embarrass yourself at the traffic lights has always been my way of doing it. When somebody pulls up and notices you, giving it everything you've got to.
And people holding their phone. Oh, that's another. Don't get me angry, because that could be an entire show. It could be an entire weekend of Big Centre TV of just people annoying me on the roads.
I'll try not to annoy you then in that case. But last, are you a sporting man? Are you excited about the Rugby World Cup starting this weekend?
I'd like to correct you. It's the Rugby Union World Cup.
World Cup, yeah, absolutely.
You know, I was born a Yorkshireman. I live happily in the Midlands, but I'm born a Yorkshireman, and I'm from Hull. So we've got 2 rugby league teams. This is the Rugby Union World Cup, but it's great to see.
It's a proper rugby, though, isn't it? It's a proper rugby, really, isn't it? It's the one the papers are getting all excited about.
Yeah.
Look, so.
I'm really excited. The fact that it's happening at Villa Park, I don't know if you're a Villa fan, how happy you are with that, because Australia are playing on it, and that pitch is going to get torn up by 30 big burly men. And, you know, Tim needs all the help he can get at the moment at Villa Park.
Yeah, is it Australia, Uruguay, isn't it? I think are playing at Villa Park. I mean, it's nice that they're taking it around the country properly, and it's not all at Twickenham, Millennium Stadium, you know. And I mean, I went to the Wales game a couple of weeks ago, the warm-up game with Italy when, you know, the Walking Wounded were left on the pitch. So Wales have not had the greatest of
No, they've had everyone knocked out, really. I think Scotland, they peak, and they're going to peak at the right time. I think Ireland are finished. I don't think England are going to do well, but yeah.
Well, you heard it first, Scotland. I'm rooting for England, folks, just so you know. Time for another break now and to take in the latest headlines from the Big Centre newsroom. But stick with us, because when we return, I'll be chatting to a high-flying barrister who's just written a new legal thriller. Welcome back. Well, in a minute, we'll meet a Birmingham barrister who's branched out into legal thriller writing. First, though, it's time for our Something for the Weekend section. And Strictly Come Dancing is back at the moment, and 2 of the most popular professional dancers from the series, Vincent Simone and Flavia Cacace, have been performing their farewell show, The Last Tango, in our region. The run ends this Saturday at the Birmingham Hippodrome with 2 shows, and there are still a handful of tickets available. But if you're staying in this weekend, well, new on DVD is a film called Pitch Perfect 2. And after a disastrous performance in front of the American president, this a cappella girl group are banned from appearing in any future showcases. The only way of redeeming themselves is to win the world title. Can sort of guess what happens next.
I got my ticket for the long way round. 2 bottles of whiskey for the way. And I sure would like some sweet company. And I'm leaving tomorrow, what do you say?
Much more fun.
When I'm gone,
When I'm gone,
when I'm gone, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone.
Office is Birmingham, London, Bristol.
You're gonna miss me by my hair. You're gonna miss me everywhere. Oh, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone.
Password.
Fart noise.
Did you not see the parentheses?
could be the ham in that man sandwich.
Let's go!
The World Championships of Acapella, where every 4 years, the best from around the globe compete for world domination. No American team has ever won.
That's because they hate us.
The whole world.
The whole world hates us.
We're gonna kick your ass.
I'm sorry, I don't speak loser. What did you say?
She actually speaks 8 languages, but loser is not one of them.
I will do whoever it takes in order for us to get back to the top.
You mean whatever it takes?
Yeah, I'll do that too.
Every Bella must christen the house by sliding down the staircase.
Let me show you. Crushed it.
Just kidding. Would you like to have sex later?
No!
Okay, you said no, but you winked. So that's a no then?
100% no.
So there you go, Pitch Perfect 2, maybe something for your weekend. Now then, move over John Grisham. There's a new legal thriller writer about to burst onto the scene. My final guest this week works at Number 5 Chambers, a firm of barristers with an office in Birmingham, but he's also now a published author, and his new legal thriller, The Brief, is about to hit our bookshelves right now. Simon Michael, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Carl.
I guess because of your career as a barrister, you're no stranger to talking in front of the cameras, but this is in a slightly different context.
It is. And we do get in front of the cameras every now and then at the end of cases, but this is a bit of a departure for me with the new novel.
So take me back to the beginning then of your career. Is this your debut novel then? Is something
Now,
totally
I
different
wrote
for you?
before in the 1990s, and then practice at the bar became too busy, so I had to give it up. But this has always been my first love. And now with 37 odd years behind me, I've got plenty of plots to put in the novels.
So is it a case of the names have been changed to protect the innocent stroke guilty then?
Yeah, mainly the guilty, yes. It's based on real cases, an amalgam of real cases, all criminal cases dealt with in London. But I've tried very hard not to leave anybody identifiable. Yeah. Most particularly as the hero is on the run from the police. He's a barrister and is a maverick, but a man who grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, but nonetheless has made it in a very traditional profession. But he's never fitted in.
Are there echoes of you in this character there or not? Or are we...
No, well, this chap's charged with murdering his wife, which is
okay. Shall
a
I
step
change
further
the
than
line
I've
of
gone,
questioning this? Yeah. Objection, you should have said to me then, shouldn't you?
Absolutely. So he's on the run from the police. So the first time in his life, he's on the wrong side of the law.
Excellent. So what, you say you wrote them back in the 90s. Were they thrillers as well?
There was a selection. I wrote a book, co-wrote a book about a sort of brave new world science fiction book, and a couple of books that involved the law. But these are the first. This is the first of a series, and they're all set in the 60s on the gangland streets of London. So they involve people like the Krays and the Yardies, so this is all new work.
So you actually, with the release of the new movie, Legend, you couldn't have asked for it to be more topical then, really.
Astonishing coincidence, because this has obviously been in the works for longer than the film has. So I was delighted to see Tom Hardy advertising my book.
When did you first start working on the book then?
Oh, well, the idea came out of a case I was involved with. It's called a cutthroat defence, where two defendants are each blaming the other. One turns Queen's evidence. And that happened some years ago, but I couldn't fit it into a story until more recently.
You must have had so many cases to choose from then over so many years of...
Yes, there's a lot of interesting cases I've dealt with over the years. I started my career doing criminal work in London at the Old Bailey before moving to Chambers in Birmingham. So there's been a lot of good cases which I've been able to mould together, and the book actually includes genuine court documents, albeit with the identities changed.
So what's a typical week in the life of Simon then these days?
Well, like most barristers, will travel. I go up and down the country wherever I am sent. We have offices. Number 5 is the largest set of chambers in the country, biggest group of barristers, and we cover every area of law. So we have offices in London, Birmingham, Bristol, Leicester, and the work comes in from all over the country. So tomorrow it's Manchester, yesterday was London, later in the week it'll be somewhere else.
Excellent. Have you always practiced around in the West Midlands, or had a base in the West Midlands?
No, I was originally worked in London, but my practice gradually moved northwards, and it became sensible to join a set of chambers in Birmingham. So that's how I started doing criminal work in London, and gradually moved into other areas of law up here.
And how does the job compare to maybe the public perception of the job, or the public image that the job has?
Well, we get branded as fat cat lawyers all the time, but as you can see from all the local newspapers, both criminal and civil justice has been under attack by a series of governments who have cut back on the money available for the justice system. Some of my colleagues doing criminal law really struggle to make a living. These are highly qualified professionals. So it is much, much tougher than it used to be for the lawyers, but also, and this is more serious, because legal aid has been taken away from so many different groups. There was a time, back in the 60s, for example, where my book is set, where anyone could get a barrister. Anyone who qualified for legal aid on financial grounds could get a barrister and could defend themselves against the government or large corporations, whatever it may be. Nowadays, legal aid isn't available for most people at all, which means that justice is largely only available for the very, very poor or the very, very rich. But the people in the middle are losing out.
And you mentioned, talking about local newspapers. I mean, this story that was in the Birmingham Post last week, this says, well, the headline says, "Cough up if you want to save your own police force." This is a Conservative policy, isn't it?
Yes.
All of these sort of stories directly relate, don't they, to the work that you do? And
they
I
do.
imagine some of these are some of the issues that you cover in your book as well.
I'm afraid it's true to say that in years to come, we will look back and ask ourselves what happened to the system of justice that was genuinely world-renowned. It wasn't perfect by any means, but when I started in this job, I, hand on heart, believed I was working for the best legal system that existed. And I think 20 years from now, we'll look back and say, why have we got a third world justice system? It is very worrying.
Do you think, is this not happening then in other parts of the world as well? Is it the same kind of erosion, really?
I don't know about other parts of the world as well as I know the British system or the English and Welsh system of justice. But in America, for example, they have public defenders, and it's well known that they are not top quality. We used to have, as I said, anyone who could get legal aid could get the top QCs in the country. Nowadays, the chaps who are doing criminal work do it for next to nothing. It has to be a calling for them. And that drags away a lot of the best brains into banking or commercial work when you really want them still doing criminal work. And we will, I think, eventually have a system rather like the one in America. There'll be a public defender system. They'll be paid a salary, but it will not attract the best brains to do the work.
I mean, inevitably, that the main pool of talent is drawn towards London, where the most criminal court activity is there. But in the West Midlands is a real hotbed for talent, isn't it?
Number 5 Chambers beat off all comers, including the big London sets last year, to get Chambers of the Year. They are the largest in the country, and I think finally the London boys realise that there's genuine competition. I mean, Birmingham has some of the very best barristers in the country.
Unfortunately, in our region, we don't have quite as many courthouses as we used to have, do we? Which is I guess another story, particularly the magistrates' court side of things. I mean,
it's exactly the same point. The budgets for civil and criminal justice have been slashed, and courts are closing. Now, some of them were pretty ancient buildings. Some of the porter cabins that I've worked in, a couple around London, where you had to put an umbrella up when it rained inside the building, it's a good thing they've gone. But the fact is that the system requires much more money putting into it. It needs to be properly computerized. The stories you hear on a daily basis of the courts losing files, people not being warned to attend, so money is wasted there, or cases have to be thrown out. It's all down, I'm afraid, to a lack of money. And if the government, not just this government, any government, isn't prepared to fund it, my view, and I think a lot of the lawyers believe, that that's a fundamental erosion of one of the tenets of democracy. Take Russia. They have elections. You can vote for the government or others, but people disappear off the streets. People cannot take the large corporations to court. If you don't have access to justice available to everybody, democracy doesn't stand up. And that's, I think, one of the, if you speak to most barristers nowadays and solicitors, you'll hear the same story.
I think there's a general feeling, isn't there, in the current austerity agenda, that yes, you know, everyone's in favour of cutting out needless bureaucracy and management levels. You know, if an organisation is bloated, but you know, there's only so many times you can keep.
No, I agree. And for example, the chaps at the criminal bar have had their fees frozen for decades, and now they're being asked to take cut upon cut upon cut. But the result is going to be obvious. Eventually, the really clever people, the people who are needed to hold the system up, will think, I can do better doing something else.
All of this, presumably, though, for a man who's now about to start another parallel career as a best-selling author, it's all grist to the mill, isn't it? These are great topics to get your teeth into.
They are current topics. My books are period pieces in the sense they're set in the 60s at a time when the system worked a lot better, I think. And also that was a very exciting, rather lawless time. And I don't know if you've seen the film.
I've seen Legend, yes, absolutely.
Well, that gives you a flavour of what it was like.
Is your book as brutal as that?
No, not quite as brutal as that. I like to think it's a little bit more subtle than that. But you know, the Crays do make an appearance in it, and back in the 60s, it was a very exciting time to be a barrister. I mean, I'm a little bit too young for that, but you know, it was still happening when I was starting at the bar.
Have you seen a different type of person that's come into your profession over the years then? Is it?
Yes, and that's a good thing. I'm a grammar school boy, and when I started, I was the exception. The vast majority, I would say 80 to 90% of the people who were starting at the bar with me were from public schools, and they were very few women. And now I think it's right to say that more women are joining the bar at the bottom end than men each year, and you do find a much greater spread of people from different socio-economic backgrounds. So that is a very good thing. But then again, you have the difficulty with student loans and so on, that you again withdrawing money from the people who really couldn't afford to do it otherwise. And I think there is a trend, or there will be a trend, it's the better heeled kids from better heeled families who will go to the bar. Because at the beginning you don't know much at all, and it's a very risky profession in your first few years.
Have you found that you've had any kind of, maybe not resistance, but suspicion from perhaps your employers or your colleagues when you tell them that you are writing a book and they're thinking, hang on a minute, am I going to be revealing state secrets here?
No.
How do they react?
Generally, very supportively. I had a number of emails from members of Chambers when they saw that I had written a book, and 2 or 3 said they congratulated me on the basis that they'd always wanted to write a novel but never quite got round to it. So no, I don't think anyone's worried about that. And because it's set in the 60s, most of the people involved are dead.
I mean, the thing that always amused me, I worked for more than 20 years in the newspaper industry, and whenever a newsroom was portrayed on film or on television, it bore absolutely no resemblance whatsoever to what happened in the real world. Presumably, your colleagues are grateful for the fact that you're coming at this from a completely informed position then.
Yes. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I watch crime or legal justice things on the television, I find myself shouting at the screen for most of the time because it's so inaccurate. This is absolutely accurate. It's a courtroom drama and a thriller, but there's nothing in it that hasn't actually happened, both in terms of court procedure or the cases or the way that the scenes of crimes officers deal with the scene of crimes or exhibits and so on. And as I say, there are genuine court documents published in the book, so you can actually follow what the system was like.
So
yes.
Are the little grey cells already starting to whir on the next project then?
The next,
do you get the bug? Or?
Next 2 are already written. Right. They both need a bit of work, and number 4 and 5 in germination stage.
You're a machine. How is it?
Well, it's as I said earlier, I wrote in the 90s. I loved it, but I had a wife and children and a mortgage, and I had to concentrate on my job. Now, finally, I've got some time to go back to my first love, so it's just the creativity is bursting out of me. I haven't had a chance to express it for a long time.
What do you see as the art of a good telling a good story then? What's a good storyteller to you?
I think it's different for the type of book you're talking about. You need a fast-paced plot, but for me, I think understanding the people in it, understanding their psychology, is as important. And I like books that deal with real people in terrible circumstances and how they get themselves out of it. So for me, that's what's important.
If you could compare maybe the pitch that you're putting on the brief to a well-known author that's out there at the moment, is there one that's similar, or is it something totally unique? How would you best describe it to someone if you've got to give them a 30-second pitch about the book?
Horace Rumpole meets Harry Palmer.
Well, okay, like that. I like both of those.
Yeah.
The Overturn meets Michael Caine.
Yes.
We'll see if we can morph that, shall we, in the studio for you. So.
That would be interesting. No, but it's courtroom, it's detailed, but it's pretty tough. It's tough, mean streets of London in the 1960s. And it's also about a maverick who just doesn't fit in. So he has to... A man whose whole life is guided by the law, who believes in it, suddenly finds himself on the wrong side of it and has to break the law to prove his innocence because he's been framed for the murder of his wife.
Gets a bit of The Fugitive about it then
yes.
well, maybe.
Yeah, no, he's on the run for most of the book.
Excellent. So do you think to yourself, I wonder if this could be turned into a movie or a TV mini-drama? Or
as my grandmother used to say, from your lips to God's ears, I would love that. But to be honest...
you don't write them with that in mind, though, really, do you? When you?
No, I have written a couple of screenplays, and I know how risky a business that is. And in each case, they looked as though they were going to get the green light, and in the end, neither did. Yeah. So I have quite a visual way of writing, and so you do tend to see pictures, but no, we shall have to wait and see.
Absolutely. Well, the brief is now out at every good bookstore.
I hope so.
And available, and the next one, by the sound of it, isn't too far.
No, next spring, I hope.
Excellent. We'll watch with interest. Simon, thank you for coming in, and thanks for chatting to us on Big Centre TV. That's all we've got time for this week, unfortunately. A big thanks to Simon and to Dan Morfitt for being with us as well. Don't forget, Bob Hall and the rest of the news team are with you every weekday, bringing you the latest headlines from across the Birmingham and Black Country region. And if you've got a story you think we should be talking about on next week's show, drop us a line. The email address is theweek@bigcentre.tv.